Look at this coastline. If you wanted to disappear, the edge of the Maine wilderness offers endless, rocky isolation. It's quiet, remote, and entirely detached from the noise of city life. This diagram reveals a massive layout that seemingly defies logic. Hallways intersect at strange angles, creating a maze of corridors that connect a huge central living room to a series of disjointed, irrational wings. Someone figured out how to navigate this maze. A stranger slipped inside and claimed an unoccupied room deep within the rental property, turning these confusing corridors into a personal, undetected haven. But that isolation ended when the homeowner and a family of 4 arrived. As they settle into the central living room, the house's main hub becomes an active zone, effectively pinning the red dot into its isolated corner. The stranger was suddenly trapped. He couldn't leave without being spotted, so he adapted. He shifted from casually occupying the space to absolute, silent concealment, hiding entirely within the shared walls, while the family unpacked their bags just feet away. A confusing floor plan can hide you from the outside world, but the moment unpredictable people move in, that exact same architecture becomes a trap. The next morning offered a brief window for escape. The parents and the younger brother decided to head out for a hike, leaving the property mostly empty. The problem for the hidden stranger was the one person who stayed behind. The 18-year-old son didn't have a schedule. He wasn't following a predictable routine that a quiet observer could track and plan around. Instead, the teenager paced freely through the halls, completely glued to his phone as he texted his girlfriend. He wandered aimlessly through the maze of the house, paying zero attention to the spatial boundaries separating the rental from the owner's private suite. His careless wandering led him right to the door of the adjoining suite, located directly next to his own bedroom. Assuming it was locked, he tested the handle, opened it, and casually walked right in. He didn't realize the homeowner had interior motion cameras. Within minutes, the eccentric neighbor was knocking on the door to confront the teenager. The house was now on high alert, with people actively moving through the halls and monitoring the doors. A silent intruder can plan for locks and alarms. The true danger comes from a bored, distracted teenager who ignores spatial boundaries and wanders blindly into places they don't belong. When the family left for dinner that evening, the teenager stayed behind again. As the sun set, the dense Maine woods blocked out any ambient light, dropping the house into absolute pitch-black darkness. This total absence of light provided perfect cover. The stranger finally made a move, creeping down the hall to retrieve a backpack he had left hidden inside the teenager's bedroom. But earlier that day, the teenager had gotten spooked by his interaction with the homeowner. In a fit of paranoia, he hauled a heavy wooden dining chair over to his bedroom door and wedged it tightly beneath the knob as a makeshift lock. Moving silently through the dark hallway, the intruder reached the bedroom. He turned the handle and pushed inward, completely unaware of the heavy furniture braced against the other side of the wood. The pressure snapped the chair loose. It slammed backward onto the hardwood floor with a massive crash, instantly shattering the silence of the empty house.
From the living room couch and immediately fled to the screened-in front porch, locking himself inside. Down the hall, the violent impact of the falling chair triggered the homeowner's interior motion cameras. Checking his feed to see if the teenager was pulling a prank, the homeowner finally saw what had been sharing the house. The lens captured a tall, bald man stepping out of the teenager's bedroom, grabbing a backpack off the floor and retreating into the dark. Before the man could figure out a quiet way to leave, headlights swept across the property. The family's van pulled into the driveway, trapping him between the teenager hiding on the porch and the parents outside. With his cover completely blown, the intruder abandoned any attempt at stealth. He slipped out the back of the property just as the homeowner intercepted the family, and the distant wail of police sirens began to echo through the trees. Look closely at this dense brush and fallen timber. The police chased him directly into this terrain,
but the chaotic array of thin trunks and shadows provided absolute cover. He melted into the woods, and they never found him. We lock our doors to keep threats on the outside, but the true terror is finding out that the lock didn't matter because the intruder was already waiting inside before you even unpacked your bags.
Modern life is overwhelming, and to decompress, we often seek the exact opposite. We leave our daily routines to rent secluded cabins deep in the woods, treating absolute isolation as a luxury environment. But stripping away the safety net of civilization removes the implicit protection of neighbors, ambient light, and immediate emergency response. By leaving the herd, we are actively working against thousands of years of human biology. Without the constant data points of city noise, your amygdala goes into overdrive. This is hypervigilance. Your sensory radius expands to fill the silence. In this state, a snapped twig hits your nervous system like an alarm bell, triggering an adrenaline dump for survival. In the absolute silence of the woods, the sensation of being alone can shift instantly into the visceral certainty that you are being watched. An internal breach occurs when you inadvertently invite an unknown psychological element into your sanctuary. Take the case of a winter couples retreat. When a sudden breakup threatened the trip's budget, Randy brought a complete stranger named Lucy as a last-minute rebound guest. They drove into the frozen woods, effectively trapping themselves with a person they knew nothing about. Lucy's behavior turned erratic almost immediately. During a game of Uno, she erupted into a screaming fit, accusing the others of cheating. Later that night, while the others tried to sleep, she wandered the dark hallways alone, humming and skipping in a trance. Randy woke up in the middle of the night to find Lucy standing completely motionless at the foot of his bed. When he asked what she was doing, she simply stared and whispered, "I see you." Randy fled to the other bedroom and locked the door. The next morning, as they frantically packed to leave, he discovered a large knife hidden in Lucy's luggage. She had brought a weapon to a peaceful retreat for reasons she never explained. Isolation magnifies the threat of an internal breach. There is no retreat when you are physically boxed into a remote structure with a danger you brought with you. An external breach is the primal terror of being hunted from outside your walls, where the perimeter of the cabin is the only thing between you and a predator. A man named Victor rented a secluded cabin to escape social anxiety. While hiking, he heard the deliberate sound of snapping twigs, pacing him from the brush. His rational brain tried to dismiss it as wildlife, but his hypervigilance forced him to retreat inside. At 11 p.m., a knock at the heavy wooden door confirmed his fears. Standing on the porch was a clean-shaven man in a business suit. He claimed to be lost, but his voice was flat and entirely devoid of emotion. When Victor refused to let him in, the man began laughing aggressively. He pressed his face flat against the door's window pane. Staring directly at Victor, the stranger smiled and said, "Come on, Victor, just open the door already." Victor called the police, and the man vanished into the trees. When the patrol car finally arrived, Victor found his car sitting on its rims in the driveway. All 4 tires had been methodically slashed. The cabin walls provide a false sense of security. Slashed tires represent the ultimate dread of the external breach, the realization that the predator controls the environment and help is hours away. The hidden observer is the psychological trauma of realizing your privacy was compromised long before you noticed an intruder. After his father passed away, a son traveled to his father's isolated, foul-smelling cabin to clean it for sale. Throughout the day, he heard rustling and heavy movement coming directly from the crawlspace above the ceiling. To prevent outright panic, the brain uses a psychological buffer. It takes a terrifying sensory input, like heavy footsteps, and routes it down a safe, logical pathway. The son convinced himself the noises were just raccoons. Late that night, while sitting in the dim living room, he noticed a heavy blanket draped near a recliner, a corner he had scrubbed clean hours earlier. The brain's forced diversion fails when the evidence of a human presence becomes impossible to ignore. A dirty boot protruded from the edge of the fabric. As he watched, the blanket rhythmically rose and fell with the breath of an intruder. A squatter had been living in the attic filth and was now occupying this same room. The squatter never attacked. Instead, the son was left with the sickening retroactive realization that an unseen entity had spent the day monitoring his every move from the darkness of the ceiling. We have seen 3 distinct threats: the invited stranger, the stalking predator, and the silent squatter. Physical environment dictates the severity of the threat. The distance from help and the lack of visibility turn a standard encounter into a life-or-death struggle. Hypervigilance is a deeply ingrained biological warning system. It alerts us that our physical safety net is gone, and our survival depends entirely on our own awareness. True seclusion guarantees absolute vulnerability. We trade the exhaustion of modern life for the risk of the unknown. Isolation is a two-way mirror. When we retreat into the woods to hide from the world, we inadvertently provide the perfect cover for the world's darkest elements to hide with us.